record. Cool. Welcome to Powerless Penguins United Big Book Study. This week, I'm pleased to introduce Max, who's coming on to share their experience on the Big Book. Over to you, Max.
Thank you, Lois, for your service and everybody else in the background. My name is Max, and I am an alcoholic. Drugs are definitely part of my story too. It's great to see everybody this morning. I don't know why, but I have to admit I'm a little bit nervous. It's not weird. Anyway, I'll get stuck straight in because this is all about taking the action, isn't it? That nervousness will soon be taken away. Loz, you said something there before we got started about the fact that if you want what we have, you got to get a big book, and and it automatically popped into my head. Yeah, if you want what we have, but you've got to do what we do. That's the difference. Sometimes there's a lot of people in this room that do this 12-step work that have had a spiritual awakening as the result of the steps, and practice these principles in all of their affairs as a result of that awakening. And if I was to describe to you, if you want what I have and you want to do what I do, then come spend a day with us and see what we do. And I don't mean that in any way other than just do that. See what we do. See what the morning looks like. See what all through the day looks like. See what the nighttime routine looks like too. Because it is a very, very beautiful thing, but it does take work. For sure, it does take work. It takes action. Back in the day, my thing to do if I was nervous or was to pull out and send an excuse. Something else has cropped up. There's been an emergency 5 minutes before. That's not where I live anymore. And the reason why I don't live in that energy or in that space anymore is because I do this. We take the spiritual action, irrespective of the outcome, is what a very wise gentleman taught me. Because you see, the thing about it is that, and we talked about this last week in the session in We Agnostics, where we're at, that, this life is no longer about me. It's not about my nervousness. It's about what has been given to me to overcome that, to be able to continue to still be of service to the still sick and suffering inside and outside of these rooms. This change in perception, this psychic change, this personality change enables me to be given something that helps me overcome my feelings and emotions, those things that once would have disturbed me and prevented me from having a way of life. And that in and of itself is a miracle. It's a miracle. So we're going to go through this wonderful, beautiful gem of a treasure trove of a chapter that is We Agnostics. We started it a couple of weeks ago. We're going to go to the top of page 47. We finished off in last week in the bottom paragraph of page 46, where we all went away to think about the fact that, this realm of the spirit is broad, it's roomy, it's all inclusive, never, ever exclusive or forbidding to those who earnestly seek it. It is open, we believe, to all men. They're so definite in the words that they use in the big book. There's no ifs, there's no buts, but there's no maybes about anything. When they're definite, it's like they really tell us that with conviction. There's nothing to work out here. And my problem was when I came into the rooms is that I thought I had to work this all out. But in actual fact, the easier, softer way is that it's set out in such masterly detail, such clear-cut directions. And, over the course of the last lot of weeks of this book study, those words are emphasized and re-emphasized the whole way through. I often use words from the book because they're the best words to use. I can't articulate what these men and women wanted to. So I use what they say. So we went away thinking about that. We went away thinking about what all of these spiritual terms mean to us. What does realm of the spirit mean to you? What is creative intelligence? What is spirit of the universe? All different pronouns for God. What do they mean to you? Because that's what's important, not what they mean to everybody else in the room. And the sections that we're going to read over the course of today, again, continue that beautiful golden thread of emphasizing and re-emphasizing and never letting us forget that this is our own conception of God. Step 2 in the short form, as it's set out on page 59, talks about the fact that we came to believe that this power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. We come to believe it. We're on this, I hate the word journey, but we're on this journey to coming to believe that this God can restore us to sanity. I can't tell you where in my journey I actually came to believe that. It wasn't in step 2. I know that for a fact. I came to believe that each time I turned up with my sponsor, turned the pages, all that happened was somehow or other, he took my hand and placed it into the hand of the God of my own understanding. But I can't actually tell you, right, whoa, that was the day that I knew. It just happened that at some point I realized, wow, there is something else. And it's really important to think about that. I hear in the rooms here a lot that people say, well, you got to get a God in your life before you can get started. That's not what the program says. Far from it. And in actual fact, there's a paragraph coming up that explains that precisely. So let's get stuck in. And I might ebb and flow with this a little bit over the course of a couple of pages. Of course, it depends what comes to my mind. And hopefully I'll get it into some semblance of order. So top of page 47. When therefore we speak to you of God, we mean your own conception of God. Like that just couldn't be clearer. I don't really have anything else to say. But if you're still sitting in this room thinking that you have to think about everybody else's conception of God, it's like, I want to say to you, how many times do I have to tell you? But we're going to keep on telling you until you realize, like I came to realize, the key thing is that we're setting aside every single thing we think we know about everything to do with God, this 12-step program, how we have a spiritual awakening, what's going to keep us sober so that we may have a new experience with God and that we may be shown the truth, that we need to see the truth as we see it in this moment, on this day, in this second. That's what this is about. Because what I thought in the past doesn't exist anymore. What I think in the future doesn't exist. So all we have is right here and right now, and that's only going to be the basis of where my thought process comes at this moment in time. We talked about the conception last week and what that actually means. I'm not going to go down all of that again, but know that it's your own idea of God. So this applies to all other spiritual principles, expressions which we find in this book. Here's the thing. Do not let, couldn't be clearer, do not let any prejudice, any of your own prejudgment you may have against spiritual terms deter you from honestly asking yourself what they mean to you. Any spiritual terms, prayer, meditation, God, all of the words for God. If they talk in here about religious leaders, which they do later on in step 11, see where other religious people are right. Yeah, see where other religious people are right. Any spiritual terms that you can think of, set them all aside. What you think now, and ask yourself in this moment what they actually mean to you. And there's some really important words in here as well at the start. This was all we needed to commence spiritual growth, to effect our first conscious relation with God as we understood him. This is really important. Start. Commence. First. And we agnostics, we're all brought to this agnostic temperament. Whilst I am sitting here with you, the idea of God that I had at 7:55 a.m. has been set aside, and here I am again coming to you to have a new experience in this moment, to start, to commence my first conscious relation. Whilst I'm sitting with you, again, my mind could get blown open to this new experience with God. To have a new experience with what I thought my God was this morning. Because if you think about what I said at the top of this conversation, I'm a little bit nervous this morning. Therefore, I've dropped into my agnostic temperament, thinking that God would not get me through this session with you guys. So there's something about my thinking and my connection to the power that I have now that is greater than me, that I am doubting. That I have a prejudice about what I'm thinking about God in this moment, that I'm not going to get through this session. Like, what on earth is that? Because I have a power that is so much greater than me, but for some reason this morning, I have that little bit of doubt and prejudice. So in the moment that I sit in this meeting and set aside every single thing, I think I know I'm starting to commence my first conscious relation with this connection again. My first conscious relation, my first awareness, my first awakening to the relationship that I have with God as I understood him. I don't know whether that makes any sense. It certainly makes sense to me. It's just dropped into my awareness. It's just dropped into my consciousness that I, this morning, am a nervous wreck coming on to this because I do not trust the power that he's going to get me through that. Agnostic temperament can drop in at any moment of the day. Then as soon as I sit down and acknowledge I'm nervous, then something else happens in my practice of step 10 that kicks in. Boom. I'm no longer afraid. I'm no longer nervous. God kicks in. God takes over. That's it. Boom. Get on and do the job that you have to do, Mags. That's how quick it can happen. I've just realized. That's how quick it happens. Because it's me that steps away. God is ever present. God is always there. Always. Never changes. God is limitless. God is changeless. Consistent all the time. Because here's the thing, because this is what has just happened to me in the last 10 minutes. Afterward, we found ourselves accepting many things which seemed entirely out of reach. And if you're sitting here, think about this. If you can't accept this God thing, I can't accept it. You know, apparently, there's a sorry about that little noise. You can tell I have a little bit of judgment about this. I said it all aside, Mags. There's a personal story at the back of the book and it's called Acceptance is the Answer. And when I came into the rooms, everybody said to me, acceptance is the answer. I couldn't accept it as the answer. I couldn't accept that I was an alcoholic. I could not accept that I had to sit in the rooms with you guys for the rest of my life. I could not accept that I had to get a sponsor. I could not accept that I had to do all of this service work. I found that so difficult. I could not accept it. Acceptance was not the answer for me when I first came in. And sometimes it's still not. But when I worked with my sponsor, he had this most amazing ability to change with the book. He always said to me, let the book do the work. And he understood that I couldn't accept this. But when you look at the definition of accept in the book, accept it, accepting, acceptance, one of the other words that is linked to that is afterwards. Think about it like this. We found ourselves receiving many things which seemed entirely out of reach. When I set aside every single thing I think I know about, it's me that has to accept this, set that all aside, and have a willingness and an honest thought about myself and what I need, and have an entirely open mind and think about receiving this thing which seems so out of reach, something else started to happen. In that moment, I didn't have to accept fully my predicament. I didn't have to accept your version of God. I didn't have to accept that I had to do all of this work. But what I had to do was set aside every single thing I think I know, and all of a sudden I started to receive information. I started to receive information from people in the room. I started to receive messages when I was reading. I started to receive other thoughts. And I know it's just a little tiny difference in the meaning of the word, but if you look up the definition, and this is why it's so important to do this work with a sponsor, when you look up the definition, there is that other word, receive. All I'm doing now is receiving things all the time, because when I set aside every single thing I think I know about this God thing, my mind is open, other information gets in, because I get out of the way. It's the most powerful, inexplicable thing that happens. And that's the beauty of it. I say to people all the time, it's the not knowing that's the gift. I don't really know how this works other than I just take the action, say that little prayer, and something else happens. There's nothing for me to work out here. So when we start, when we commence, when we have that first consciousness sounds like such a woo-woo word, doesn't it? That conscious, all it is an awareness. All it is being awake, keeping our eyes open, keeping our mind open. It's all we've got to do. And when we have that first thought, that tiny little grain of sand of willingness, whatever you may have, that was growth. But if we wish to grow, we had to begin somewhere. You're going to have to do something. You're aware that in your first step, you've got no power, choice, or control over the substances, whatever it is you're using. You know, it's all three of those. You've now got to the point where you understand that you can't evade, you can't avoid, and you can't escape the God thing. You can't ignore it. So you've got to begin somewhere. So why not begin by probably thinking about some of the things that they're saying in here? And how about, as they say here, so we used our own conception of this power, however limited it was. You do not have to have a full-blown definition of God worked out in your mind, a vision of it, what you need from it. Don't even start thinking about what you need. Don't even start going anywhere near the point of what you think you want. That's not your job. Because you don't know what you need. You think you know what you want. But like my sponsor always said to me, how's that going for you right now? Yeah. At which point I wanted to shrink and hide under the table when he was speaking to me. Because here's the thing, this paragraph, I love it, this next paragraph. And this, wonderful line. We needed to ask ourselves one short question. One short question. At this point in your program, with your sponsor, this is just one tiny little question, 19 words, that you need to ask yourself right now. Do I now believe? Or am I willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? That's all you've got to ask yourself. Do I now, in this moment, believe, or am I even willing to believe that there is a power greater than myself? Now note that that question does not ask, do I now believe, or am I even willing to believe that I believe in a power greater than myself? You don't have to believe in it right now, but do you believe, or are you willing to believe that there is something? That's the difference. I've come to believe in, through the practice of these principles, I've come to believe in, having worked the steps like the desperation of the drowning man. But that's not what it's saying to you here right now. Are you willing to believe there is? Or do you now believe that there is? You still don't have to define it. You still don't need to know what your definition for God is. Right now, you could be moving and bouncing between great intelligence. Oh, that sounds nice. Or somebody might talk about the spirit of the universe and you go, oh yeah, I forgot about that one. Or somebody else might talk about Christ and you go, oh, don't want to go there. Somebody else might talk about Allah and you're like, oh, don't want to go there. Somebody else might talk about Mother Nature. Somebody might talk about Father of Heaven. Somebody, you're still working through what all of these things mean to you. But are you prepared to be willing and open-minded enough that there is something? Because that's all you've got to have right now. And if anybody is telling people when they're taking them through the steps, we can't go any further until you've got a God, that is not what this program is saying. We are doing the newcomer a disservice if we're saying to them, I can't sponsor you until you find God. No. Who do we think we are? Because we ain't God. It's not up to us to tell them when they're going to find the God and how they've got to find it. It's what this purpose of this book is. Lack of power is your dilemma, is what we have to tell people. Well, where am I to find that power? Well, that's exactly the purpose of the book. That's all we need to be telling the newcomer, nothing else. And we shouldn't be enforcing what we think God is on anybody. No, that's not our responsibility. My responsibility is to carry AA, which is the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's my only responsibility. I don't get into a conversation with any of my sponsees about what their God is. I don't get into it. What I simply ask them to do is to do the exercise around what do these spiritual terms mean to you. Now, of course, as we go through, we talk about God and we talk about everything and we talk about the spiritual principles and we talk about the spiritual terms. But I couldn't tell you what if one of my sponsees has decided to get into an organised religion. They might mention it, but I never ask them. None of my business. We talk about prayer and meditation. We don't talk about, where they practice it or, what venue they go to. I do prayer and meditation in any venue that I can get. I don't care what religious venue it is. I'll rock up anywhere in the world and go into a religious venue because it doesn't matter. Because my God goes everywhere and is everything. You may be part of an organised religion. Happy days. Knock yourself out. That's wonderful. Go, search, keep on searching. I emphatically assure you that, like they say here, you're on your right way. Whether you believe or you do not believe, we emphatically assure him that he is on his way. So if you haven't got that firm thought, idea, conception at this point, that's okay. Just keep on doing the work, keep on showing up, keep on turning the pages, and it is a cast iron guarantee that you will build this relationship that will become the most important thing in your life. And here's the reason why. It has been repeatedly proven among us that upon this simple cornerstone, that word's important, a wonderfully effective spiritual structure can be built. And it is repeatedly proven again and again and again and again on this simple cornerstone. I'll give you I hope it'll be, it was funny to me. When I went to my home group, the guy that became my sponsor, he always used to use these masonry terms, builder's terms. So he would talk a lot about this cornerstone, and he'd talk about the foundations, the cement that binds us, that we find out on page, 17, as we talked about a couple of weeks ago. The common peril and the common solution, the cement that binds us, the willingness being the foundation. And he would talk about this cornerstone, which I'll come on to talk about in a minute, and how important it is in a building. Later on in our step 3, we hear about the keystone. And then later on in step 11, we talk about constructively reviewing our day, construction, building, and all of that. Seriously, my view of this guy at the time was, God, he must be a good old builder. All of these terms that he's using. Well, did I get the shock of my life when I found out that he was in sales, and he was not a building merchant. He sold telephones and Wi-Fi, or I don't know what he sold, to be honest. But I thought he was Bob the Builder, the way he harped on about all of these things, cement and sand and mortar. And then when he rocked up to a meeting in a suit and a shirt and tie and all of that, I thought, who rocks up at a building site looking at like that? But the reality of it was, my prejudice, even against how this guy looked and how this guy talked, stopped me from getting to the crux of what he was actually showing me, which was the spiritual terms within this book. So, of course, I then changed his nickname from Bob the Builder to something else, which wasn't very pleasant. Because my sponsor used to irritate me to high heaven. Oh no, here comes Mr. Know-it-all, Here he comes again with his big book under his arm. Here he comes with his multi-pack of highlighters and all of the pens in his top pocket underneath his handkerchief. Really? I didn't want to hang out with this guy. But lo and behold, here we are, bestest friend in all of the world, Because I had to set aside my prejudice about Bob the Builder. Who am I to say? You could rock up at a builder's yard in a suit and a shirt and tie. What would be the problem with that? Anyway, I'm sharing that with you to show you the extent as to which I thought I knew. I'm sharing that with you to demonstrate that I thought I was intelligent and that my intelligence was going to kill me. And all this gentleman was doing was sharing the fact that this cornerstone is a really, really important piece and a really important quality on which something else depends. So within the building terms, what he was explaining to me, and what many, many people in this fellowship explain when they talk about the cornerstone, is that once that cornerstone is properly fixed in place, everything else that's built around it depends upon it being secure. So when I come to believe in this power greater than myself, it's so critically important that that stone is in place for everything else to be built around. The cement that binds us. We talk about the common peril, right? 17. Remember page 17. Remember page 47. The common peril, the allergy. We can't just sit about the rooms talking about our allergy and the problems that we had. It has to be bound together with the common solution, which is this book, the great news that we join in brotherly and harmonious action, right? All of that cement that binds us. Then we fix the cornerstone properly in place by coming to believe that this power can restore us to sanity. And then later on we learn about this other stone, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. As you know, I'm a big believer in growing where we're planted. Because at any point, if my cornerstone is wobbly, then the other pieces around my spiritual structure will not be secure. So this has to be properly fixed in place for me to be able to continue to grow. You know, I have to get a depth of a relationship with this power. We have to continue to grow in understanding and effectiveness, is what it talks about later on in the book as well. But right now, at this, I suppose, junction, whether you believe or are willing to believe that there is something, you are flying. You are on the right path, and do not let anybody tell you any different. Because get ready for the ride, because it's going to be a good one. And you don't even know where it's going to take you to. You don't even know what's ahead of you. You don't even know how good this is going to get. Honestly, you may not want to, but trust me. Trust me on that. And if you don't want to trust me, which you probably really shouldn't, trust what's in this book. This is the only place you're going to find the truth. And this might be you, this next paragraph, this might be you. Because the people that wrote this book understand what our thinking's like. They know how we operate. That was great news. I.e., great news is that you don't have to believe right now, but be willing to. And even if you do believe now, that was great news to us. For we had assumed we could not make use of spiritual principles unless we accepted many things in faith which seemed difficult to believe. You might be sitting here thinking, this is really difficult. I don't believe in this prayer and meditation stuff these keep banging on about. I don't believe in this set-aside prayer that they keep on talking about. I don't believe in this power greater than themselves that they keep on talking about. But that's okay. Don't put the barriers in front of the newcomer. It's our responsibility to take them away by doing this. When people presented us with spiritual approaches, how frequently did we all say, ask yourself this question. If there's anybody in this room, seriously ask yourself this question. I wish I had what that man has. I'm sure it would work if I could only believe as he believes. But I cannot accept as surely true the many articles of faith which are so plain to him. That might be you. But here's the thing. But it is comforting to learn that we could commence at a simpler level. You do not have to believe as I believe. You do not have to believe anybody else. You do not have to believe like anybody else in this fellowship. Not whatsoever. In much simpler terms. A very wise man last Saturday gave me a wonderful reminder. In his share back, he talked about, this contempt prior to investigation. That quote from Herbert Spencer at back of the book in Spiritual Experience Appendix 2. It's actually on the second page, page 568. Contempt prior to investigation, or this belligerent denial. If you're sitting with contempt, or you're in belligerent denial about all of this, you got to set that all aside as well, because that's what stopped me from getting this. My contempt prior to investigation. If only I had what that man had, I could do this, but I don't think I'm going to get the depth of what he has, so there's no point in me doing this. Now, the reality of the delusion that I had sitting beside this man, a different guy from my sponsor, was this guy was around now 35 years. He was part of a religion that I was never going to be part of. His practice and everything was the embodiment. He's a very, very, very well respected person across the world for his practice, and I was comparing myself to him. There was no chance I was going to get what he had. But I was rocking up at all of the prayer meditation meetings, step 11, thinking, I want to be him. I want to wear his robes. I want to have all of the markings on his head. I want to, be able to say, well, whatever it was going to prevent me from getting this. I had to start on a much simpler level. And so do you. And what I have to hasten to add here also, sometimes in the rooms, when people are given the honour and the privilege to share their experience, strength and hope as to how they got to this solution, often people will share back. And often people will then start to enforce their view about what the person shared at the top table. They will try to almost go against what the person said about the God of their own understanding. They will often try to make a point about, in a very perhaps passive-aggressive way, that their version of God is right and the person at the top table is wrong. So, everybody has the right to be right and everybody has the right to be wrong. Our tradition 10 would have us that we don't bring any outside issues. We talk about, the God of our own understanding. As the God of our own understanding, the God that presents itself in our group conscience and all of that sort of stuff. If I'm sharing with you my conception of God, and I'm telling you I'm not part of an organized religion and I have my spiritual ways, that's mine, not yours. Don't judge me. Set aside, lay aside your prejudgment. You may be part of an organized religion. It's not for you to force that upon me or anybody else in this room. That's why we use the term the God of our own understanding. That's why we use the term higher power. That's why we use the term spirit, creative intelligence and all of that. I'm being very mindful of the words that I'm using here because I don't want to cause any controversy and I don't want to cause anybody offense. But it's so important in these rooms that we are mindful of the newcomer and that we are not causing them confusion about God. Because if I don't believe in a heavenly Father, that's okay. And if I believe in Christ, that's okay. I'm using the words from the book so that everybody feels included in this inclusive, broad and roomy realm of the Spirit. That I am not making this exclusive only to what I think God needs to be in the rooms. That's not what the fellowship is about. It's so incredibly important. Sometimes people will come in and they will quote the Christian Bible. That's not what we do in the fellowship. That's an outside matter. And I'm only using that one publication because it's the one that comes into my mind. The fellowship is broad and roomy, never exclusive, always inclusive. I am so exceptionally mindful of the newcomer that comes into the room, always, because that's why we are here. To enable them to get access to this power. And if I'm enforcing something upon them, which is not their conception of God, they might decide, you know what, I'm so confused here, I'm just going to go. And they might not ever get the opportunity to come back. These fellowships have been around for many, many, many years. The people that wrote this book were so courageous in what they put in here to be able to give everybody, as many people as possible, access to this power. The schisms that they got into when they were writing this book because one part were half agnostic. There were some that were going down the Christian route with the Oxford groups. And then all of a sudden Hank Parkhurst said, well, why not think about the God of your own understanding to allow more people to get this? That's what we have to keep in mind. I hope that makes some sense. We'll move on. Here's the thing, besides seeming inability to accept, much unfaith. Oh, I love this paragraph, page 48. Don't forget this. Don't forget this. This is a beautiful, beautiful, wonderful, amazing paragraph. It just emphasizes everything that we've been talking about, but the way that they do it, it just goes, yeah, amazing, right? So, besides the seeming inability to accept much unfaith, we often find ourselves, here's us, we often find ourselves handicapped by obstinacy, sensitiveness. Oh my God, what are they saying? They don't know who I am. They don't know what's happened to me. If they had my life, they'd know why I drank and used as I did. Oh my God, I can't hang around these people. They're too loud. They're too loud. They shout. They love life. They laugh too loud for me. All this sensitiveness and unreasoning prejudice. I had all of that. Look at the story I told you about my sponsor. That was true, Bill. I moved from hating Bob the Builder to loving the salesperson in a matter of a heartbeat. When I had the honesty, willingness, and open-mindedness. Laws, you're laughing at me. It's true. It's true. Many of us have been so touchy that even casual reference to spiritual things made us bristle with antagonism. Oh, do you know those little moments where you bristle? Ooh, God, you get the chill down your spine. Can't think about that. Or you get this, kind of built up rage inside you. Oh my God, here he comes again talking about his God. The man arriving at my meeting in his robes and I'm looking at him. I can't be you and I want to be you. God, this internal tug of war with everything, it's crazy. Bristling with this antagonism. But here's the thing, this important word, this sort of thinking had to be abandoned. My thinking. Yes, Steph, I am saying this word, abandoned, so it gets into people's mind. My thinking is the problem. It's my head. Lay aside the prejudice, set aside the prejudice, abandon all the thinking that you're thinking now, even about me, this mad, crazy woman sitting somewhere in Belfast on a Saturday morning. I don't really care. Because what we're doing here is getting you access to this part that changes your life. And though some of us resisted, we found no great difficulty in casting aside our feelings. We're just going to cast them aside. There's that word again, aside. Set aside. We're just going to cast them aside. It doesn't say get rid of them here. It does later on. We're just going to set them aside. Because here's the thing, you might be sitting here right now faced with alcoholic destruction. Whatever your addiction is, you might be faced with destruction right now. And even if you're not faced with that, you might be sitting with the destruction of the absolute and utter unmanageability of your life. Even without alcohol. Even without the drugs, the absolute unmanageability of your life, that's what you're going to be faced with. So if we're faced with this alcoholic destruction, we soon became as open-minded on spiritual matters as we had tried to be on other questions. Because we had no other option, like it says on page 44, to accept the spiritual help. Like it says on page 25, blotting out the consciousness of this intolerable situation, or accept the spiritual help. Because here's the thing, this is priceless. These next few lines, priceless in this respect. Alcohol was a great persuader. It finally beat us into a state of reasonableness. Sometimes this was a tedious process. You could be going through that right now, and we hope no one else will be prejudiced for as long as some of us were. The thing that is standing in one's way is our prejudice. The thing that is standing in your way is your prejudgment of what you think you need, you want in your life. What you think you need and want from the people in this room. What you think you need and want from this fellowship. I'm telling you now, you don't know. You don't know. Your addiction is the great persuader, because you have no other option in this state of destruction and unmanageability to accept the spiritual help. That's the only option that you have. You could blot it out to the bitter end. You could, but there is another thing that you can accept. There is another thing that you will receive when you set aside your prejudice. Because here's the thing, and this might sound very, very morbid, but this is the reality of it. The great persuader. Wow, I love that. In my experience, the only thing, genuinely, the words from this, I'm so passionate about this, the only thing that got me to God in the end was the great persuader. How ironic is that? My addiction got me to God. And here's the thing that might be morbid. I was doomed, 100% doomed to an alcoholic death. I was only a matter of days away from my own funeral, and my sister and my sponsor tell me that. They remind me of that. But had I been doomed to that alcoholic death, I would have been free. I would have been free. The great persuader would have freed me through the passing of my life. But equally, the great persuader freed me because I had no other option than to accept the spiritual help. Isn't that unbelievable? The thing that could have killed me got me to the power in the end. It got me to the power in the end. And it didn't have to be so tedious, because the thing that was the block, the thing that was the barrier was my thinking. Looking at you, pointing at you, judging you, having an opinion on you, and all you were pointing me towards was the power and the solution that solved my problem. Not only the drink problem, but all the problems I have in my entire life. So I've gone from not wanting to accept that acceptance is the answer, and not wishing to receive what you have, and not wanting to be this down and out, horrible, addicted, alcoholic, whatever people thought of me in society, to being so grateful for who I was and what I am today. It is not our job to tell the newcomer that they have to believe now. Our job is to take their hand and place it in the hand of the God of their own understanding, and let this book do the work. I'll leave it at that for this week.